What is up, guys? You got NotTheWorst here, bringing another Black Desert online video, and today we're taking a look at the latest round of buffs and maybe potentially some nerfs on the global labs that hit today. These are, I don't know if there's going to be more rounds or not, but these are air quote PvP changes. More specifically, these are protection and CC changes that have occurred on the global labs, which obviously have implications for both PvE and PvP, and they took their time rolling these out and did roll out for all classes at once rather than how the PvE buffs initially started with kind of waves of different classes at different times. These are expected to be going live on the NAEU servers on January 3rd, meaning that next Wednesday should be the KR update for that if it follows the regular protocol. I've added that into the revision sheet here. You'll also see that Scholar was also included in here. She got a bunch of her cooldowns reduced in some cases, and then some of the flows that actually just didn't have cooldowns before now have them also, and you can effectively add add-ons to those skills as well. Now you couldn't before since they didn't technically have a cooldown. So those are in there. If you don't have this sheet already, there's a link to it in the description if you just want to check that out. It has all of the buffs so far, so I'll just show you like the first page that we've seen since the beginning of their PvE buffs, from what the original state prior to these rounds of buffs to future state. Protection changes, make sure you that's the updates that came in for today. Make sure you scroll down because some of these have had like so many changes, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, here's like the Bzerk page. You're going to scroll down to get to the protection changes that were on there. So just FYI, if you're navigating that, if you want to, I'm also going to add timestamps for each class that's listed here as I go through these. I'm going to go ahead and read each one because it's not like a huge list for all of them. So you can follow along in the spreadsheet. You can read the spreadsheet on your own or use the timestamps. Totally your call. But let's get into it and get going. First, we have Archer, who gets Earth Shatter, gets a frontal guard added, and a knockback removed. Zephyr Leap switches from frontal guard into super armor. For good old Bzerker, Wrath of Beast is now a monster only stiffen. Prime Beastly Windslash gets a frontal guard picked up. The Succession Weakling Hunt switches from frontal guard to super armor. Ultimate Frenzy Destroyer gets frontal guard. Flame Pummel gets a frontal guard. And Giant Leap's iframe is extended until he hits the ground. Corsair sees a frontal guard on Crashing Wave. A super armor added on Overflow. The Absolute Sea Stroll is now a float on monsters only. The Prime Jetstream has an iframe immediately instead of being super armor, iframe, super armor. It's now iframe to super armor. Prime Ocean Melancholy is switched over to a super armor, and Charge has a frontal guard added. DK picking up a split second just has its frontal guard removed entirely. If you don't know what that is because you don't really think about the name often, that's when you're in your Q block and then you left click for it. That actually was a protected CC. It is no longer. Absolute Comma Slash, not the Prime, has the CC now only affecting PvE mobs. Enforcement gets a frontal guard added. Blooming Black Rose gets a super armor. Not bad. Corrupt Ground gets a super armor, but the stun on it is now PvE only. And then the Prime Twilight Dash into Comma Slash, the backwards movement kind of sliding that the character does in the animation has been reduced. Over for Drac, she got nothing, so there you go. Guardian gets Absolute Strike Down, is now PvE, CC only. Same with Absolute Frenzy. Prime Mutilation gets a frontal guard. Prime Black Blood Circle is now a float to players and monsters. Flow to Ashes gets a frontal guard, and the bound was changed to a float. Frigid Wind gets a float for both players and monsters now. Searing Fang has a super armor added to the second hit, and Fireborn Rupture picks up a frontal guard. Ash, we have Absolute Descent getting the super armor time, the length of time that it's on there, increased, as well as the Prime version. For Prime Chosen Blade, it gets super armor, and the KD is PvE only. Crown Kick gets a frontal guard. Inquisition gets a super armor. Kuno, we have the frontal guard removed on Tragic Blade. Smokescreen is now CC for PvE only. Kunai Block has the stamina consumption removed. Prime Wheel of Wrath gets a frontal guard. Prime Foxclaw gets a frontal guard. Prime Shackles gets a super armor and has the stun removed. Kunai Throw has the speed of linkage and whatnot improved. Moonstorm has a bound. Chain Crash Saw Chakram now has stun for everything, not just monsters. Lunatic Discus has a frontal guard added, but the knockback is removed. The Delighted Blast has the super armor length increased, and then speed improvements on both Pinwheel Fury and Lethal Spin Spree. Lahn gets the Deadly Restraint and 3-point Stipple skills applying the debuffs to monsters only. Prime Blade Dance gets a super armor that now begins from the first hit, and we see that also apply to Prime Crescent Barrage. Fragrant Stigma has a super armor that applies until you land now. Blood Moon Twist gets a Frontal Guard. Flow Mangler is going to KD players now. And Binding Chains gets a super armor, but it is now a monster only bound. Good old Maegu, Awakening Kit only. Twirling Fox Flare gets a super armor, and Fox Flare Stroke gets a frontal guard. Maehwa, we've got Absolute Dragon Bite is now PvE CC only. Ice Fang now has players CC added. Petal Swirl has a super armor added. Frost Flower has a super armor added, and the KD removed. For Musa, his Absolute Dragon Bite also now monster only CC. Retaliation, same thing. Divider, same thing, CC monster only, but it does get a frontal guard in trade. One Step Back gets a Stiffen added, and Flow Dash Slash gets a super armor. For Mystic, Flash Step picks up super armor and loses iframe, so does Silent Step. Wolf's Fang gets a frontal guard and is PvE CC only. Flow Strike Through is PvE CC only. Flow Landslide, same deal. Absolute Elbow Edge gets a super armor. Prime Scissor Kick gets a float on the first hit as well. Prime Sea Burial is now players and monsters on the CC. Double Flash gets the super armor length of time it's on there increased. Hurricane Sweep gets a frontal guard and is now PvE CC. Earth Splitter gets a super armor added, and Wave Orb gets a frontal guard added during the length of the skill, and it is PvE CC. For Ninja, we have Smokescreen, which is now PvE CC. Prime Black Moonlight gets super armor, along with Beheading the Dead, and it also iframes for the disappearing portion of that. Shadow Slash gets a super armor. Seamless gets a frontal guard and the bound removed. Vacuum Slash gets a frontal guard and the float removed. Drastic Measure gets its speed improved. On Nova, we have Face the Darkness getting a super armor and PvE CC. The Absolute Storming Star is now PvE CC. Absolute Command Fianchetto, same deal, PvE CC. Prime Stars Call has the cooldown change to 7 seconds. Prime Icy Thorns gets a frontal guard and PvE CC. Excel Stars Call is a super armor. Stars Call gets a knockdown across the board now, so players and monsters. Royal Fencing Repost gets frontal guard length of time increased. For Ranger, Call of the Earth has an effect now of ranged hit rate plus 12% for 20 seconds and is reduced to a 30-second cooldown. Prime Regeneration gets a super armor and is PvE CC. Windstep has a DP plus 20 effect, and Elven Rage has a minus 12% evasion effect added. On Sage, we have Absolute Void Gateways being a PvE CC. Aetor's Spear is a frontal guard. Shock Relay gets a frontal guard, as well as PvE CC, and the cooldown was increased to 5 seconds on that. Lightning Surge gets a super armor. For Scholar, we don't see CC changes, whatnot. Obviously, she's been out for days. She had several skills that either had their cooldowns reduced or, in some cases, for some of these flows added. So, Flow Golden Pillar now has a 4-second cooldown. Flow Golden Vine, 6 seconds. Hammer Strike, 4 seconds. Attraction, 3 seconds. Drop Kick, Hammer Down, Hammer Punch, Hammer in the Knee, all 6-second cooldowns. And one small step is 8 seconds. Shai gets a frontal guard on Try This, as well as on 1, 2, 3. And, however, it is PvE CC. Go gets a frontal guard, and Tuck and Roll can be used essentially in any direction now. For Sorc, we see Storming Crow getting the bound removed. Prime Turnback Slash gets a super armor, as does Soul Harvester. Grim Reaper Judgment also gets a super armor, but is now PvE CC. For Striker, similar to Mystic on Flash Step and Silent Step, it loses iframe and picks up super armor instead. Wolf's Fang gets a frontal guard and is PvE CC. We see PvE CC treatment as well on Flow Strike Through and Flow Landslide. Prime Roaring Tiger gets a frontal guard. Prime Rampaging Predator now CCs players as well, as does Wolf's Hunger. Double Flash has the super armor time increased. The Echo Spirit now also stuns players, and it was added to the first hit, and Battlecry also stuns players. Tamer, we have both versions of the Surging Tide picking up PvE CC only. Flash Pole Thrust gets frontal guard, as does Flash Stance Shift, and then we see Lightning of Earth and Echo both getting super armors. On Valk, we have Absolute Judgment of Light, having the stun removed. For Absolute Righteous Charge, it gets a frontal guard. Prime Severing Light also gets a frontal guard. It is now only PvE CC. Divina Volt, the flow skill there, gets a super armor. And Blitz Stab, including the ultimate version, both get frontal guard. Warrior has PvE CC only on Chopping Kick. Prime Earth Tremor now affects players for the bound, and it can also be linked by pressing F. Hopefully make that more smooth for warriors. I don't know. Prime Heavy Strike gets a frontal guard. Prime Counter is now has the Shift S input added along with it, and Prime Evasion can be linked while using Prime Counter. Which gets super armor on the following skills: Speed Spell, Magical Shield, Succession, Magical Evasion, and Elementalization. And then for Wizard, we see super armor added to Speed Spell, Magical Shield, Succession, Magical Evasion. Rain of Fire gets it after losing the frontal guard. Flow Aqua Bomb gets a frontal guard, and Elementalization also gets super armor. For Woosa, we have Blood Flower picking up a super armor. Seachion Field, probably butchered that, sorry, it gets a frontal guard. Bloom Burst gets frontal guard and is PvE CC only. Bloom Deluge gets frontal guard, PvE CC only. Mark of the Moon gets frontal guard also. The stun on that, however, is removed. So there you have it for all the classes that got updates. I believe it was everybody except Drak did see some changes. So there you have it. Well, let me know what you guys think about what's going on in the comments down below. Like I said, we should see these live on NAEU servers January 3rd is the expectation for that. But that's going to be it for this video. Be sure to like it if you did enjoy it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you get notifications when new videos go live. And if you'd like to catch me playing live, there's a link to my Twitch page in the description down below. Jump on over there, drop a follow so you get notifications for that as well. With that said, that's going to be it for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.